Nice.
Charlie is in the studio. We're at podcast number 5 so far. It's been a day of pods. It's been fantastic. And I'm so excited to have you here because you come at this from kind of a different lens. You've got quite a founder hat, and I know there's loads of things that people can learn from you. But let's start.
Hopefully.
Let's go back. What I didn't know about you, Charlie, is you are British, but you were born in Berlin and you grew up in Russia for 5 years. What's the story there?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on, Millie, for your big milestone. You've got some serious stamina doing 8 podcasts in 8 hours. So hats off to you. But yeah, to answer your question, not everyone knows this about me, but yeah, I am. Both my parents are British. So yeah, slightly unusual backstory. But yeah, I was born in Berlin in '88 because my dad was in the British Army and it was the Cold War. So there's, lots of reasons for British soldiers to be there at the time. So he's got an interesting story himself. Came back to the UK for a bit. So I don't really remember Berlin, by the way. I was like 6 months there or something.
Okay.
But yeah, then he basically got a job in Russia, in Moscow in '95. And I was there for 4 or 5 years. And so, yeah, a lot of my formative years I was actually at international school in Moscow. And I had like a kind of different accent. I had almost an American accent when I was like 8 years old. And so, yeah, I played like ice hockey, not football, growing up. But yeah, that was kind of my background. And then I moved back to UK when I was 10. And I've basically been living here.
Do you think that those like kind of 5 years in Russia influence, like, do you see that show up in your adult life in any way?
Yeah, definitely. So unfortunately, I didn't really learn much of the language because I went to American school and I had like undiagnosed ADHD at the time. I was just paid no attention in any classes ever. So I didn't actually learn very much. Like because I was daydreaming the entire time and no one knew what that was at the time, I don't think. Anyway, so yeah, it showed up in a few ways, I think. I guess like you just get used to being adaptable because you have to learn to adapt to going to a completely new environment, Russia, getting used to that, and then having to do it again when you come back. And it was actually quite a big, even though it sounds similar, like to some people, because obviously I'd been in the UK till I was 5, then went back when I was 10. The years of age 6 till 10, a lot happens in that time. And so it was actually quite alien to me when I went back. And so learning to adapt is definitely one thing. Learning also just to be a slight misfit, because I was like a misfit in Russia. I loved being at school when I was in Moscow. The first year back in the UK was actually really tough. Like I really struggled to adapt. I didn't have that many friends, honestly, for the first year I was back in like year 6 when I was 10. But, you learn to adapt and you learn to be a bit of a misfit and you learn to understand, have empathy for people who basically like maybe, don't know anyone in the situation you're in. And so I think there's actually a direct line between what I do now and that experience of like building community and that sort of thing. Because you kind of want to help others like fit in and have a good time and that sort of thing. So I think it's kind of unconsciously showed up later in my life. Yeah.
I swear I saw a post from David Spinks saying, I don't know if you know David Spinks, the Business of Belonging author. I swear he had a similar like gist where he was like, I actually realized that my community building might be linked to my early days of like not feeling like I fit in, maybe not being able to make friends easily. Very interesting. I wonder how many others kind of like have that link.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there's others. And like it wasn't like as natural as I had this experience. So I was like, from this day forth, I'm going to build communities on Slack. Like it kind of happened way more organically, like when I was later in life sort of thing. But like, I think there's been this unconscious like thread from there to where I ended up sort of thing. So definitely had a huge influence on me, I think. that experience.
Well, let's talk about where you've ended up, and particularly like where you are literally sitting right now, because I think there's a story to be told from being a kid who's just moved back to the UK to owning a co-working space in London. And I know you had a pretty interesting path to get there. So when you tell people, say you've just met someone at a party or a barbecue, and they're like, oh, so like, what's your story? What do you do for work? Like, how do you explain it?
Yeah, so in terms of what I do now, it's different story to like what I used to do. So when I say what I've done, my story is kind of like I started out in the ad industry. So I started working for creative agencies in London for like 5 or 6 years, which was really fun and chaotic, and a million stories from that. But like, I just got very interested in products generally, from Product Hunt, from indie hackers, stuff like that. And I just had a complete career pivot when I was like 29 or something. And I was like, what is the closest thing to what I do where I can get into tech? Because I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to learn to be a developer quick enough. So I became a product manager. And then I've been contracting as a product manager and user researcher for like last 6 years. But simultaneously, during this whole time, I started doing community building stuff, because I got really interested in indie hackers and products. And I started doing a meetup in London called Indie Biz. And basically everything that's happened since has been directly because of starting Indie Biz. So this monthly pub meetup for SaaS builders, creators, indie hackers, founders in London, it now has like 80 to 100 people coming every month, like really cool people, made some really close friends. That led to launching a paid community called Ramen Club online. And then since I've launched a co-working space, Ramen Space, a few years later. So yeah, it kind of was like free meetup, paid community, co-working space. And now I also have a SaaS called Cozy, which lets you build community on Slack. So basically I have a community that helps you build products and a product that helps you build communities. And that's kind of where I've ended up eventually.
I love that. I also love that you named something that I think people overlook when they think about, I'm going to build community. You said you made some really close friends. And like,
yeah,
that's the crux. That is the crux. If you can make some close friends, and if you can help others make some close friends, that's like community building 101.
Yeah. Definitely. And when people ask me, should I build a community? Should I do this? Should I do that? Like, sometimes I say to them, like, the value you get from this it doesn't necessarily have to be your whole thing, right? So I do think there's a great path, a great career to be had as a community manager or running a paid community. There is a lot of benefits to that. Like, you know, you've seen this yourself. I've seen this. But so I'll give you an example. I've got a friend called Max Sinclair, who runs a very successful like meta ad agency out of London and around the world. And he also has a WhatsApp group chat called Sassy Dinners. And once a month, he hosts a dinner for SaaS people building a SaaS, like software as a service product, for those that don't know, at his lovely house in London. And this is not I don't think this is necessary. It could be, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be his like number one thing and like a paid community. But it brings a lot of value to his life, like, you know, meeting cool people. It's really fun to host, learning, that kind of thing. So there's lots of benefit to building a community. That's an example. That is a community, right? It doesn't have to be like you don't have to have a website and a newsletter and, you know, staff for it to be a community. And he gets so much value out of this, and, you know, and there's lots of people should think about doing this kind of stuff as well, because there's loads of benefit it brings you. Like, the money is almost like, you know, not the number. It shouldn't be the number one thing, like, you measure about what you're getting out of it, I don't think. As long as you can sustain yourself, obviously, somehow, you know.
Yep, totally. I think you've got a really interesting vantage point, because not only are you like a builder, you're totally a builder, right? Like, you've got literally a portfolio of different kind of products and services, but you also have an insight into builders. So you're like on the ground with people who are building stuff. Have you got any kind of like really sticky lessons from either building products yourself or from seeing people build products at the moment about like how to decide what to work on, how to know when to like throw your weight behind something? I feel like these are the kind of things that block people and keep them stuck.
Yeah, so, you know, any kind of formula you have or rules, there's always exceptions, right? So there's no like perfect formula, but like there are definitely like certain principles you see showing up more often than not, which like I think just improve your odds of success, especially from bootstrapping. I think before the kind of wave of bootstrapping online products and stuff the last 5 years, everyone's sort of understanding of building like, you know, SaaS or tech businesses was just like big VC backed stuff. Like they basically thought this has to be like Airbnb. This has to be something no one's ever done before or never thought of before. And you need to raise $100 million and this, that, and the other. And, you know, if you're doing that kind of thing, you're like, your thing is, I want to be a billionaire, then you maybe do need to do that really high risk, difficult stuff. But if you're like bootstrapping stuff, like, you know, you're actually better off doing stuff like in already competitive markets. And so the people that I see, some examples of people I see doing well, some different frameworks for choosing what to work on is one, look at what people are searching for online. There's a million analytics tools which tell you this, like Ahrefs, like SEMrush. So my friends Saba and Tim, they run Veed. I do a podcast with Saba now called the MRR Show. I think Veed is on 50 million ARR now after like 6 years. And they started it because they just, first of all, they were interested in video editing, but also they saw the search traffic for editing videos was taking off online, and you could still rank for it. You know, looking for what people search for is a really good framework, time and time again. And there's just like low hanging fruit all over Ahrefs for the other day I was just looking at vending machines in the UK. And I saw there's massive traffic that's easy to rank for vending machine keywords. And I was like, you could just make a whole business on a vending machine directory and information site if you want. Like, I think if I did that for full time for a year, I'm pretty sure I could make a living from this alone, just on those keywords. A second thing is just build something in a competitive market and then add your own sort of sprinkling of magic on that, as in making it more accessible, making it cheaper, something like that. And so my friend Elston runs TinyHost. It's like the easiest way to share and host your work online. And so hosting is a giant tens of $1 billion industry. And he was like, I'm going to make something that's like accessible to anyone to use. So it's just a couple of clicks, you can host something. To focus, just that idea, focus on SEO. Now he's making like 500K a year from this with no investors as a solopreneur. It's a simple idea. And his conviction, because it took a while to take off, was that he was just getting really good feedback from people. They're saying, even when he wasn't making a lot of money, people said, I really love this. And he just saw the potential and he just kept at it for like a year or two. And now he's doing well. A final framework, because I don't want to talk for too long before then you ask your next question, is another one of our members, Andy Cloak, runs Data Fetcher, which lets you run API requests from an Airtable base. And so this framework is take something that works in one market and do it in an adjacent market. So an example is, obviously, if you have a car wash in one town, it will probably work in another town, right? So his thing was actually, he saw that this product worked really well for Google Sheets. There was this company making like 5, 6, 7K a month from doing this exact thing as a Google Sheets plugin. And he's like, Airtable's taking off. What if I built this for Airtable? Now he makes 25K a month from that. And so these are just like simple frameworks almost anyone can do to figure out what to work on. So yeah, I would say those are 3 good ones.
That is a fantastic answer. And I love what you did there, which is the like biggest green flag of a community builder is you use examples of probably people in your community or definitely in your circle. And it's like, it's the rising tide lifts all boats like principle. And just there you were able to assert like that you know your stuff, that you have authority, but also bring other people up with you, like community 101. The other thing
I try.
I love that you said build in a competitive market, because it's not spoken about enough. It's like we're told we should run away from the competition, but in fact competition is proof that there is demand, that people want this. I
agree. Like, I think this is one of the single biggest changes of mindset people need when they start entrepreneurship, especially if they're bootstrapping. It's like, obviously people should build new stuff that hasn't been done. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but like people think it's a bad thing if there's competition, and it's not a bad thing. Like people just need to forget about that. Like it's usually a good thing. It just shows that there's demand. If there's no demand for something, you need to either it's never going to work, which is 9 times out of 10 that's what happens. It will never work. Or 1 times out of 10, you're just really early and you need to like create that demand, and that kind of you need to teach the market. And you can do that, but it's incredibly hard, incredibly expensive and time consuming and risky. And so that's, you know, that's when you see stuff like the Ubers of the world, stuff that just didn't exist before in that format. But even then, they knew that people like to get cabs, they like to travel places. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't like that crazy. Something really crazy is like Cirque du Soleil or something, which is just like, how do you even think of that? And no, that's going to work. Do you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, 100%. It's also to your point of keeping at it. It's the whole like it's going to take longer than you think, and particularly more so if you're building in a market where no one understands you, where you're basically educating this market. It's something I felt quite painfully with Generalist World, where like so much of my job is the market education, and it's kind of getting a little bit easier 3 years on, a little bit. But it's hard, and for the first like I don't know, year and a half, 2 years, it was like flying this flag that no one understood, and it was pushing a rock up a hill a bit.
Yeah, I bet, you know, and I think you've done such a good job at like sort of creating a movement around this idea and done it extremely well. Obviously, it's going really well, right?
Thank you.
And I think it's like, so that kind of thing it's just higher risk, right? So if you do it, it's less likely to succeed. But if it does succeed, you are literally like in a place that like it's very hard for people to get to, and it's very hard for anyone to compete with you, basically. So if you do make it through, you know, you're just going to fly. And that's kind of where you are now, I think.
Yeah, and I want to kind of caveat that with like one of the reasons that I've been able to make it work is that I live in a place where my expenses are so low. Like I live in the middle of nowhere where there is nothing to buy.
Yeah, I love that.
In London, it's so much harder, right? Or any city, like you just have all these overheads and expenses. So it's like if anyone's listening to this being like, oh, I really want to start a business, but like one way to do that, not for everyone, but one way is to move somewhere that is more affordable. And it doesn't have to be the Scottish Highlands, but somewhere that's more affordable.
Yeah, but that's why people move to like, you know, Thailand and all sorts of places. Sure. Because it just makes it easier. Like doing this from London, there were benefits to building the stuff in London, like in terms of the people here, the network, it's fun. But, you know, realistically, it just takes you longer to be able to quit your job because everything's so much more expensive. So even now, technically, I don't have to do freelancing. I could just live off Ramen Club and stuff. But like I still choose to because it just makes life like less stressful, basically. And I'm planning to stop at some point this year, but like you know, it just makes life a lot easier. It's just because it's getting more expensive as well. It's not like it's a moving target. Being ramen profitable in London, as in having enough money to survive, you know, is a moving target, and it's getting more expensive. So you just need to make more money.
Getting more expensive.
yeah, literally, the price of ramen is going up right as we speak.
You should have like a ramen price like tracker or something that like tracks the price of ramen.
I know. I think we are going to try and make something like that at some point. Yeah. You know, it's like have you heard of the Big Mac Index by The Economist?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The Big Ramen Index.
Yeah. So it's funny. We do have as part of our website. It is called the Ramen Index, but it doesn't specifically track the price of ramen. It's more like, okay, what is the cost to live in every city in the world? And we try and update it it's based on Numbeo API data, so it's similar to what Nomadlist has. But
cool.
We take a very opinionated view on what ramen profitable is. So we say enough calories to survive, rent, sharing with 2 or 3 other people in the city centre, and like getting a cinema ticket once a month so you don't get bored, and some other stuff. And
some kind of
entertainment. So for example, in London, we estimate if you lived in this really, really bare bones way, you could survive off like 2,000 a month. And that sounds like crazy to some people. They're like, I couldn't survive off 2,000 a month. I was like, well, if you lived in the cheapest flat, and you just ate rice and beans every day, you could actually live off 2,000 a month. And that's what it means, ramen profitability. It's like the bare minimum, you know?
Right. Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check that out. We can also link it in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure.
When you think about, so you've got all these like ongoing active projects, all ongoing active, like almost like companies. Yes, they feed into each other, but like you're a solo founder, right? You don't have a co-founder.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
How? Like, how are you balancing all this plus freelancing? What's the secret?
I'd ask the same to you. You're a solo founder. You're doing a lot of stuff, right? But I mean, it's just I work a.
Touche.
But I guess to be fair, what your thing is generalist world, right? You have this one entity, and all of your effort goes into that. Whereas at the moment, I kind of have like a few different things. One thing I would say is just like, so I guess the main things I have is Ramen Club, I have Cozy, and I have freelancing. And honestly, it's a lot of work. Like I just work a lot, first of all, and I just spend a lot of time trying to prioritize stuff, and so it's not easy, to be honest. I wouldn't actually recommend I would. One other thing I was going to say earlier is when you were saying like what do you see in terms of like principles for when it works out for people building like an online business is like people talk a lot about like small bets and like having multiple projects, and the thing is like the vast majority of people I see doing super well have one thing, right? They don't have 5 startups, they have one thing. And when people point to examples of like, they look at like Pieter Levels, for example, and people like that who have like 10 profitable projects. And the thing is, like, you're right, he is an example of someone, but he is an absolute outlier. Like, I am not Pieter. I know I can't do what Pieter Levels does. Like, I'm happy to admit that I just don't think I'm going to be able to do that. He's an absolute animal. Like, he's just operating on a different level to most people, I think. And I don't mean that to be defeatist. I'm just saying he's crazy in a good way. And I think you just need to focus. People need to focus on doing one. Don't do what I'm doing this more from ADHD than because it's a strategic thing, But, I just try and work hard and just like, I'm trying to strip things out. I will have a coach. He's helping me to like think about how do we simplify everything. So eventually it'll be much simpler than this.
That's actually, I have also started working with a coach recently, and I can't believe I didn't do it earlier. It's such a worthwhile investment. Shout out B Jones if she's listening to this, because and my advice, the person who gave me this advice, it's actually Lottie Unwin from Upworld. She said to find a coach who scares you a little bit. And that's exactly the level I went for. So it's not finding someone who's like, you're doing so great, unless maybe that's your style, but I needed someone who was going to just kind of call me out and push me to my edge and then stretch me a little bit further. So if anyone's feeling a bit stuck, asking around, and I don't know how you found your coach. My one came through a referral, but so worth it. So worth getting someone.
How long have you had a coach now?
About 3 months.
Nice. And you could feel the difference for you in terms of like, then the biggest thing for you, is it that they challenge you to kind of push things further?
Yeah. I saw the difference after one session. Like,
really?
It was so quick. It was so quick because I think a good coach cuts to the core and like strips away all the like bullshit of like, oh, let's focus on this or this or this. And it's just like, this is... Like it was a cutting to the core and getting to the core of the issue. Like she figured out stuff that I've been working with my therapist for like 5 years in like one session. I was like, dang girl, you've got a gift for this. Yeah, so I think I maybe hit the jackpot as well there.
Yeah, so I've had my coach for it's actually gone by really quickly, probably almost 6 months. It's called David Sherry, or Brandswell on Twitter. He's been amazing. So he used to run a startup called Death to Stock. It's like a newsletter for like great stock photos. But I think like, he's got a lot of experience, but he kind of tries to pull it out of you to do it yourself, which I think is what great coaches do. But I think it's actually more helpful, especially as a solo founder, because I think when you have a co-founder, it's as simple as like having to explain what you're doing to another human and then replying or giving you feedback. Like at the most basic level, just hearing yourself out loud explain it and them saying, why have you chosen that? Why not this? And that kind of thing. Just that alone is, without all the other stuff, is really, and I realized, yeah. And you felt the same, right?
Yeah, I felt the same completely. I realized that it was one of the first sessions that we focused on was like, what is my time being made up of? And like basically tracking everything I'm doing. And then like being like, why don't I have someone helping me with the stuff that's like, can definitely be outsourced, and so that I can focus on the stuff that is only something that like Milly can do. That was a biggest unlock. And I feel like I've been at a ceiling. I've hit a ceiling because I was operating in a way that felt comfortable, but wasn't like pushing me. I didn't have that like that someone like kind of kicking me up the butt, being like, no, actually outsource that and focus on the stuff that only you can do. And it was gold.
Yeah, I love that. This is. I wish I had one earlier in my career, honestly.
Yeah.
And to anyone who's listening to this, like, if you've considered it, like, it's really worth trying it and experimenting with different coaches and finding one for you, because it can really like take you to another level.
Totally. I'm curious. I know that Ramen Space is fairly new, so maybe you're still like noodling on these answers.
Pun intended.
Whoa, that's beautiful.
I love that.
Fantastic. It has been the biggest, I guess, difference between having like an IRL business versus like something like a SaaS.
Yeah. So I guess like something I've realized for what like more recently is, communities are slightly different to SaaS's, in that, I think, for example, that like doing a lifetime membership is better for a community than it is a SaaS generally, because when you have churn in a community, when you have churn in a SaaS, right, it just affects your revenue, right? Yeah. In the community, it affects your revenue, and it also affects the experience, because people are losing other members, and it actually is bad in two ways. So if, that's why it's like reducing churn is actually more important in communities if you can. But that's slightly answering a different question. That's communities generally versus SaaS. But so a physical business is obviously like, it's a bit of a commitment, because with a SaaS, you can do like the digital nomad thing. It's like the most free you can possibly be, is having a purely online business. So there is a trade-off which comes with having a physical space that you don't have with an online business. But there is the benefit to that as well, is that it's just like, because a physical business, almost any physical business, especially a co-working space, ends up being some kind of community. And so it just makes your life better, in my opinion. Like, I think the nomading thing, I haven't really done it a lot myself, but it can get a bit like, you can get used to it eventually. And, it can be a bit disparate if you travel around too much. But like, you're kind of committing with a physical business to being part of the local community and building your local community. And, you see the same people over and over, and you come into the space. Also, other local business owners, you end up making friends with them and like helping each other out and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's kind of like a commitment to being part of your local community, like, which is very different in that sense. And you need to worry about, there's lots of things that can go wrong as well, which, like, as in if a pipe breaks or someone tries to break into your space, or the other day the internet realized, we only can take so many devices concurrently. You need to figure that, and it's a bit of a pain in the ass sometimes. Yeah. But overall, especially if you value, hosting and being part of a community and creating a community, it's a very special kind of experience actually, which you'll never get that with a SaaS. But a SaaS, you can easily scale to like there's different like strengths and weaknesses to these things, I think, and that's kind of why I'm trying to do both. That's why I want to have a community. That's why I want to have a community, and I want to have a SaaS. And the SaaS also helps me build the communities. They kind of fit together nicely, So I would recommend it to some people, not everyone, but like I think it's a good experience to try in your life,
And when you're like evaluating opportunities, so let's say you had your businesses, and then this opportunity came to start a space. Do you have any like mental models about how you think about what you say yes to and what you say no to?
Yeah, so I do ascribe to the hell yeah or no thing, basically, and that you have to like, it's like if you're like generally speaking, but with this I was thinking about this for like 2 or 3 months, and going back and forth with the landlord when he said the space is going to be vacant soon. And I think first of all, you think what could go right, and you think, okay, is this a game I even want to win? Like, does winning this game actually look good? they have that saying, play silly games, win silly prizes, right? Do I actually want to win this game? And I was like, okay, if I created an amazing space in London for the local community in this segment, and it's really fun, it's making some money, that would be great. I love that, right? I was like, okay, that's good. But there's the other side, which is like, okay, how would you manage the worst case scenarios and making sure you cap your downside? Because what the reason it took a while is because initially I was really worried about like the costs of running this, basically, in terms of when you add up like the cleaning, the internet, taxes, stuff breaking, rent, like all this stuff. It's like it's like a meaningful sum of money that you're spending every month with no guarantee that you're going to have members paying you, right? And and so we kind of went back and forth, and luckily I happen to know my landlord personally. We're friends, and we came to something where we kind of capped the downside. So like we had like a good break clause, for example, if things went wrong, and just had a good understanding about what the vision for the space was and that sort of thing. And so that's kind of like that. Once we kind of got to that as well, I felt okay, now we've got like both sides like sorted, and I felt like happy to go ahead with it. So yeah, generally you have to want to win the game, but also manage the downsides, like risk, treat it as an experiment in that way.
Yeah, because I think this is the generalist conundrum, when you can see opportunities everywhere and you're like, oh, you can see opportunities, and then you can also see a path of how to get to those opportunities. And I think my biggest challenge in learning over the past few years has been evaluating what to say no to and what to say yes to. Yeah. And I do love the heck yeah or heck no, but my problem is I'm quite a heck yeah person.
Yeah. As a positive person, you end up just thinking, and also like sometimes like I think sometimes maybe you're the same, but I feel sometimes I'm a little delusional, just like, oh yeah, I'll figure that out.
A lot. Not a little.
But like I don't know why, but I'm just like, and that's why we do what we do. I don't know, but like it's a funny one because about 4 different people tried to talk me out of doing this. Really? And they're people that have run spaces. It's not just random people. People have run their own co-working spaces, right? And I still did it because I was like, okay, we've got like, if it goes badly, we've got a good break clause. We could say we tried, right? But I think generally speaking, this is maybe a specific to a co-working space. Maybe it's all sorts of things, but it was so much easier because first of all, I already had a community. So like I've been doing meetups in the local area with our audience for 5 years, right? And so I just there was already a community to kind of draw from to try out the space. And that made things way easier. And also the other side is like, I know people have been trying to open a space in London for like a year and a half, 2 years, and the deal falls through every time. And having a good landlord and having a community make doing a physical business way easier, basically. So if you could, I would recommend trying to get this situation if you're trying to do this sort of thing.
Yeah, that's great advice. What do you see coming over the next 12 months, maybe a little longer? What's your predictions?
What with the space and what I'm working on, or other stuff generally?
The world, tech, careers, like any spicy predictions of I mean, we're in a funny space right now where everything is changing so fast, and it really at this point seems like I can barely keep up with all the new things happening all the time in tech.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, as someone who is in the weeds of building and sees a lot of other people building, how do you think careers, tech change over the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it might be an unsurprising thing I focus on, but I honestly think just the number one thing to consider here is AI. And I just think it's been developing so rapid. You get like naysayers, of course, but like I've just been playing around with O3, for example, the new model from OpenAI, and it's just amazing. Like I feel like it can get you think about it, there's 8 billion people on Earth, right? The vast majority like don't really know about like, they have their things they know about. Basically, to get in the top 10% or 5% of knowledge in a subject, I think with O3 you can get to the top 10% of all humans in a subject within like a day or two of just like going back and forth with it now, which doesn't make you like a world expert, but you can kind of like learn anything with this, I think, to some extent. I know of people who are just like getting so far so quickly. I'm a user researcher in my freelance work, and a year or two ago, I didn't trust these models to take a bunch of, let's say you did 10 interviews with people for an hour. I didn't trust it to take all that information and create an accurate report with like real quotes.
Sure.
I now trust it to do that, right? It's like a smart, like junior researcher that you would trust that they're not making up a bunch of shit when they create a report. I feel like it's there now, and I just think it's going to get better and better. There's this essay recently, AI 2027, which is like a sort of, it basically predicts a 2027, it's just going to rapidly take off. I think my spicy prediction is that I think we'll have something that a meaningful number of people will consider AGI in the next 12 months.
Wow.
And there's different people's prediction, there's different people's definitions. No one agrees what AGI means, right? But like one thing, if you look at like if you just look at Sam Altman's, who runs OpenAI, description, he says AGI is a weakly defined term, but generally speaking, we mean it to be a system that can tackle increasingly complex problems at human level in many fields. So I don't necessarily, so you know, it's subjective, right? So I don't personally believe that AGI has to be autonomous. Like I think you prompting something, it can still be AGI, even if you have some control over it, even if it's not completely autonomous. I also don't think it needs to be superhuman. It doesn't need to be better at every single human at every task for it to be AGI. It just has to be, I think if it's better than most people at most subjects, that for me is pretty much like approaching AGI. Artificial superintelligence is a separate thing to AGI. That's like, okay, it's better than everyone at every topic. And I don't think we're there in the next 12 months, but I think we're there in the next 5 years probably. And the effect this has on careers and economics is it's kind of hard to predict because, so put it this way, Google just hired a post-AGI economic researcher to try and research and predict what the world is going to look like post-AGI, because they think it's going to have such a dramatic impact on work, careers, the economy. So imagine it like this. Imagine like instead of needing 10 employees to help me run, obviously in a physical space it's different, right? You're still going to need people in physical spaces, but like in like work that can be done entirely on a laptop, like could you just have agents that do the stuff for you? And what does that mean for employment? What does that mean for economics? What does that mean for meaning? And some people say what this could end up to is some kind of like space communism, where you actually suddenly have a system that's smart enough to centrally plan a whole economy that's doesn't rely on humans, and that actually you're going to have people are not going to need to work because it's going to be able to generate so much wealth, and that you'll have universal basic income. And I'm hoping this doesn't happen necessarily, because like people actually like to work, I think, and feel that they have meaning. And so this is like, you know, the worst case scenario is some kind of like tail risk where it's actually, you know, people worried about this kind of blowing up the earth or something. That's worse. Yeah. So a medium risk is because it works, but no one has to work anymore, and they just lose all meaning and become depressed. I think the best case scenario is that it just becomes an extension of us, and more people are just able to live better lives and create more. And I like to think of AI, and a lot of people think about it in terms of doing the same thing for free or doing the same thing for cheaper and you not having jobs. I like to think, what if you have this and you do 10x the output? What if you 10x the size of your community, or what you can offer people, or the value of what you offer? And I would like to see, I like to have an optimistic view of it will allow more people to create more amazing stuff and create more abundance for everyone. So you know, that's a long-winded like answer to what do I predict will happen, but like I think basically AI is going to have a giant impact, which big 10x 100x bigger than what we've seen before in the next year or two, basically. Wild times coming. Great time to be a builder, great time to be a generalist in my opinion, where you are this fast learner. You know, you're good at playing and tinkering with tools and collecting the tools that are going to help you
work, it's like do more work, but without working more, if that makes sense. So it's not necessarily like, my optimistic view of AI is that it helps us create some more balance, and we're actually able to step away from, like, I'm doing this, we're both doing this on a Saturday. Like, this is our work.
Yeah.
It's good crack. It's good fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun.
3:00 on a Saturday. Where else would I be? But we're people, we are very privileged, to be honest, very fortunate that we enjoy the work that we do. Not everyone is in that position. And I guess my optimistic view is that it is able to automate some of the stuff that is the soul destroying kind of jobs that people really don't like. And just like any industry change, jobs will disappear, but more jobs will be created. And the optimistic view is that that is going to be a positive outcome.
Yeah, and historically, that's always what's happened. Like with the Industrial Revolution, with like, in the short term, it disrupted like, certain types of jobs, but it brought it back in manufacturing. When cars were invented, yes, like there were probably less stable hands jobs for a period, but then it created entire new jobs for cars. And if it just if it's the same as these kind of trends, then yeah, it's going to create whole new industries. The whole question is just, okay, is this time it's different, basically? I don't. The thing is, though, it's just like, it's not going to get rid of, like, you're still going to need people in a restaurant. Like, people still want to go to restaurants. They still want to go and see sports. Like, it's more like it's the Industrial Revolution, but for knowledge work, for internet, computer work, basically.
Interesting way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, there may be some short-term disruption, but I think generally speaking, it's going to if it happens the right way, it's going to create a lot more abundance. There is some risk, and it's a little bit scary, but it's very hard to put the genie back in the bottle, especially since, let's say the US government stops all AI research in the US, in UK, everywhere. It's still happening in China, and it's like on par or like and keeping up with this. So they're going to keep on doing this, and so the US, from a geopolitical stance, is going to be like, oh, well, we can't have China creating super intelligence before us because that could be bad, potentially. Yeah. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't think it's like, it's kind of like nuclear proliferation in a way. It's like, once the genie's out of the bottle, it's hard to completely put it back in. And it's kind of the new reality we're in, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Is there anything that I haven't asked you and you're like, oh, I really wish I had a chance to talk about that, or I've got like something on my chest that I want to get off?
Well, I think there was something you were asking before this interview, and just what I've learned from generalist worlds and you generally. Yeah. So like a couple of things are, one is, I think just the kind of normalizing the idea of being, because it's not just like a Slack, it's like a whole movement and idea, right? Like the normalizing the idea of having unusual careers, not fitting into an easy box, I think is great. And I think it's clearly, from being in the community, has given a lot of people they feel very seen from this, and they like meeting other people, and you create a space where they can easily meet people like them. And I think that's amazing. Creating a category basically for this within community, I think is great. But like, I've also learned a lot of like a more tactical level of just like how you build community. That's quite useful. Like, I mean, it's on a basic level, just like how few channels you have on Slack, I think is amazing. Like, you don't have to scroll down to like see most of them. Like, that's like a very common problem, that people have like 50 channels and people don't. It's like having a user interface on a website with like 200 buttons or sections or something, having too many. It's just like a better user experience.
Yeah. That's interesting feedback. I'll have to tell Edger.
Some other quick stuff is the way you do handle introductions is great. It's like you spend a lot of time like replying to people's introduction, reading them, tagging loads of people, and it's almost like an event every time a new person joins, right? And so people feel
feedback.
The onboarding's really, really good in that sense. But also on like a business level, do you still do that thing where like you let people in quarterly?
Yeah.
Only
so 3 times a year now.
That's it. So that's kind of like Is that like from Daniel Priestley, the guy that did what's this? There's a book he writes on this.
Oversubscribed is the book.
Yes.
We did it, to be honest, we did it from a place of user experience. So like when we were noticing that when people were kind of just rolling in, they can just, it's like if you're at a party and people are just like rolling in, you don't really notice if someone's rolled in, and then they're a bit like, where do I go and stand? Where's the punch? Like, where's the food? But if you do it in a very structured way where you're like, this week we are welcoming people. We are welcoming. And it's like, that's my focus. It's Edge's focus. Everyone gets so excited because they're like, ooh, new people are coming to the party. So that's something we've been doing now for about a year. And I don't think we'd go back. Yeah. I don't think we'd go back. I think it's a really helpful strategy to get people settled in.
Yeah, so, you know, from the user experience perspective, like, that makes a lot of sense. But just also just like the kind of slightly constraining it slightly, so there's more demand than there is supply. Yeah, that just works really well. I think you can have exactly the same community, but if you just slightly hold it back, it just makes people so much more interested in anything, basically. Like, it's like a members club. And I've just learned a lot from just watching how you do this kind of stuff that I'm probably going to apply to Ramen Club at some point. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. That's awesome. And we're going to be opening the doors next month. So if anyone's listening and it's like, oh, what's Charlie talking about? Come on in. Charlie, this has been great. And we got to do a Ramen Club GW something. We'll do something fun.
Definitely.
In London.
Definitely. Let's chat. I'd love to do that.
Awesome. Well, have a lovely day. I'm going to close us off live. Thanks for listening. If anyone's been listening.
Thanks a lot, Millie. Catch you later. Bye.